there's a lot of corruption throughout the centuries, like every scam you can possibly think of has been, originated in Italy.
Is it that bad?
It could be unhealthy in the 70s, and we didn't believe it, or actually became true. Like Serge was eating 5 kilos of steak, red meat a day.
5 kilos?
Kilos.
Not pounds.
Not pounds. That's what, 11 pounds?
Because right now I believe people do not want to look like 300 pounds of muscle.
You're injecting a male hormone in the female body. It's like giving you estrogen.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Nobody talks about it.
So something's going to happen, whether you want that or not. I mean, that's...
What did you take back in the 80s, 90s?
For me to get that big, I would have to triple what I was taking.
So, Alex, you're from Europe.
Yes.
From Italy originally. You were born there, right?
Yes, Rome.
But how did you end up for a few years in Australia? Your parents got to Australia to do business there.
Yeah, when I was 3, things weren't going too well with the restaurants in Italy, so they sold that and they went to Australia because my dad had a sister there. And they opened a very small restaurant that grew tremendously and just became like the talk of the town in 7 or 8 years. It was like the #1 Italian restaurant in a little town in Australia.
Really?
Yeah.
How old were you?
I left when I was 3, went back to Italy when I was 12.
So how is Australia?
Oh, it's absolutely fantastic.
Because of nature, because of people? Or
just everything. I had the best childhood. Just in the 70s in Australia, it was just magical because my school was like a block away from the beach, So we would have science lessons on the beach, looking at crustaceans. And before going to school, we played tennis. After school, we played rugby and swimming. And that was just my normal lifestyle, just walking to school, very little crime. I just have great memories of Australia, and I love going back there.
That's the 70s?
Yeah, we left in 1975.
Do you know what situation is right now? Is it the same?
I went back 3-4 years ago. It was still great. I think it's still great. Things shifted a little bit. I think with the lockdowns, there's a bit more discontent from what I hear from my friends.
Yeah.
I'm just dying to go back, probably next year.
So comparing, for example, the Australia and California, because California has the beautiful nature as well.
It's similar.
It's similar, right?
Very.
It's not different.
When I came here, the big difference is going from Australia to Italy. It was like night and day, different cultures, different mentality. When I came to California, I thought this is kind of like Australia, the way I grew up, just the way the structures of the city is, the homes, the working environment, and the people more friendly. In Rome, we're a bit more, if I don't know you, I'm just not gonna smile, I'm not gonna say hi. It's that kind of attitude towards you. Whereas in Australia and California, people are so much friendlier.
Yeah, but it's strange because, for example, we used to think in Lithuania that people are more nice in the countries where there are a lot of sunshines and etc. So the Italy is sunny as well. It has a lot of sea, beaches and etc. So why do you think they are so mean?
If they know you, they're very, very friendly, and the friendships become very solid and very, very strong. I think they're just scared of people they don't know, just because it's an ancient culture. There's a lot of corruption throughout the centuries, like every scam you can possibly think of has been, originated in Italy. So people are just a little weary, but once they get to know you, if you're okay by them, you can form really strong friendships. But that initial impact, you wouldn't walk on the street in Italy and say hi to someone you don't know, and coming here, people, just say hi to me. I don't know them, but they would nod and hey, how you doing?
Yeah.
Which is just very bizarre to me, in the beginning.
Have you figured out why only in Italy the food is so great? You can almost get in every restaurant and the food will be awesome. Later in this podcast, Alex is going to tell you what supplements did he use back in the 70s, 80s and 90s. He will also tell you that those supplements taste just awful. But nowadays, when we choose supplements, we don't even think about the flavor. We just look at the label, we look at the price and the quality of the product. That's why I always stick to caged caged products have unbelievable ingredients. Take a look at this, for example, whey protein isolate. No whey protein concentrate, no soy, no pea protein, etc. Whey isolate only. Let's take a look at the ingredients list. It's whey protein isolate, natural flavor, sea salt, prohydrolase, cinnamon powder, stevia, and sucralose. That is it. And natural flavor is amazing. No synthetic BS in the whole lineup of caged products. Just go to cage.com, choose the products you need, and at the checkout, use discount code APOLLO, APOLLO, and you will get additional 15% off store-wide. I promise you won't be disappointed with the quality of these products. And now, back to the podcast.
I really think the legislations are different in Italy. The way they grow their crops and everything else is just completely different. So everything's been organic since forever, you know. I remember in the 1970s when I came back, there was a huge scandal because some farmers were giving their cattle estrogens. And that was just like, oh my God, they're giving estrogen to the cow. Like, whereas in America, that's like a normal thing. It's all, you know, for decades it's been going on. So they just really care about the food. You know, being a poor country for many years, all you had to look forward to is just sitting down with your family, having a great meal. Even if you were poor, there was always some food. You know, you'd make it at home, you'd grow your own vegetables. So it's just part of that culture where a lot of importance is given to the quality of the food and the taste. So it really is, you know, as you know, an art form there.
I also heard that the distance, the average distance between the field where, for example, the avocados and tomatoes are grown and the table that is served the food is very small comparing to other countries.
I
for
think
example,
by
the
law,
US and etc.
By law, it's like that. Like you go to the butcher shop or the supermarket, you see a steak, you have the address of the place where the animal was slaughtered and the time and day that animal got killed. Like it's on the label, and it's just shocking to me that would probably never happen here in America, right? But you know where it's coming from, and it's always very, very close. The vicinity is really close.
And what really interesting is that the food is not as good from a fitness perspective. For example, the pizza, pasta, ravioli, and etc. But there are not a lot of fat people, obese people in Italy. Do you think that's because the products are not the GMO and stuff?
Yeah, it has to be. There's no other explanation. I've been noticing this every time I go back. I go back once or twice a year. And even though I do eat a lot of food, I go off my diet, I don't get as fat as I would if I was going off my diet here in America. So I think it's the processed foods, a lot of the chemicals like the coloring agents and the sweeteners and things like that, they're not allowed in Italy and most of Europe too. So I think it's the source and the quality of the calories that you're eating, you know.
What's your favorite place in Italy?
Well, I like Rome because I'm from Rome, but I love Florence because it's like an open air museum. You know, you just walk around, just the
Huge.
art. Yeah, just if you love art, you know, Florence and Venice, I really like. Yeah.
When I first got to Venice, I first got to the Venice in California.
Yeah.
Then I got to Italy, and they are really alike.
Yeah, the canals, they try to make it.
Yeah, the canals. But the houses in California, Venice, are incredible.
Yeah, very expensive.
Very expensive, and comparing, for example, the real estate in Venice and the whole atmosphere in Venice and in the canals, they differ. Because in Venice right now, you can in California, a lot of people with druggies and etc. A lot of freaks.
Yeah.
But in the canals, it's like other city.
Yeah.
But it's just 5-10 minutes.
That's true.
From the other place.
It's a big difference.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So Alex, first of all, I would like to thank you for one thing, because I believe I could speak from millions of people. So it was you who originally introduced Rich Piana to the people.
Yes.
Because I remember back then it was like 2012, 2013.
12, yeah.
Yeah. So I watched those videos, and all the videos started with Ardenti Films presents. And when I got to the US a few weeks ago, a friend of mine, Eva, says, "I know Alex Ardenti. He's a photographer. Ardenti. Where did I hear that last name?" Then I got, that's the guy. Tell me, how did you end up meeting with Rich?
Oh God, I knew Rich like maybe 15 years before that. I mean, we just went to Gold's Gym in North Hollywood and we worked out together. We were both doing a lot of commercials together and little bit parts in TV shows. So there's only a handful of us that were really going out there and doing auditions. He would book a lot of commercials because, you know, good looking guy, great voice, you know, great physique. So I just knew him for years, and he was a little disappointed about the way his career was going as far as competing, because he wanted to become pro, but he couldn't even make it to like the USA level. He won Mr. California, but I think he tried the USA once or twice, and the judges didn't reward his type of physique, you know, so he was a little disappointed.
But back then he didn't have any tattoos or something?
He started to get them, and back then judges didn't like the tattoos, and I told him I wouldn't get too many tattoos. When he decided, you know, I'm not going to compete anymore, that's when he just got a lot of tattoos, you know. But a new company started to form. It was called Mutant. It was a branch of PVL up in Canada. And the marketing director was looking for some new talent. It was a small company. They didn't have a big budget. I said, my friend Rich is great. I mean, you know, he's not a pro or anything, but he's really great on camera, great personality. A lot of people like him. And they saw photos and said, no, he's like already like almost 40, and like, no, we don't really like the tattoos, and we want someone who's like competing and winning shows. I'm like, well, yeah, if you have the money to sponsor Mr. Olympia, sure. But if you don't have a competitor on that level, you're better off getting an influencer. And there were no influencers at the time, but he was someone who could talk about the product and still look great on video. And on video, the general public doesn't know if you're Mr. Olympia or Mr. California. Exactly. They don't even care. They don't know what the federations are. It's just a whole different, you know, area there. So I really had to insist, because they kept saying, no, we don't want him. We want a competitor who's winning shows. And finally they took a chance. They gave him like $300 a month, and Rich didn't really need the money. But I know, because he was making money on commercials and personal training. Once we did that first video series that we shot more like a documentary style, it really took off on YouTube. And just like day by day, his Instagram was just starting then. So everything happened. It was like a perfect storm. YouTube was getting big for fitness. Instagram just started, which was really getting big for fitness. The brand was coming up. A new brand was selling internationally. And he just, like week by week, just the popularity just soared incredibly, you know. So everything happened, you know, at the right time, at the right place.
So you shot 4 seasons. The 5th was released by you a few years ago.
Yeah, we did 4, and then basically Rich wanted, you know, he wanted a raise. I think Mutant said no, at this time we can't. And he said, okay, so I'm leaving. So I don't know exactly what happened. I got different sides of the story. I was just kind of neutral to the whole thing. I was sad that he left Mutant, because we had a good thing going, you know, just the series, each series was getting more and more popular, and his fame was growing tremendously. So he just decided to leave, and then later on he just started his own company, and the rest is history, as they say.
Can you tell me more about Rich? Was he the real Rich like we saw on videos? Was he acting more? Because there are a lot of rumors about him.
It's hard to say, like, how can I put this? In LA, an actor, when he's on camera, is always a little different than how he is in real life. That's just the nature of the business, and you have to be that way. You know, if you're just like a regular guy who's, you know, isn't too excited throughout the day, you go on camera, do an audition, and you present that version of yourself, they're probably not going to hire you. So you have to put on kind of an act. So he put on an act in the sense that he created a persona for the camera, because he understood that. And that's how me and him clicked. Like a lot of bodybuilders, I would shoot a lot of bodybuilders who were pro, but they were really terrible on camera. They couldn't put a sentence together. They weren't excited. The eye contact wasn't there. They'd look at the ground all the time, and they'd mumble words. And whereas he was used to the Hollywood kind of acting for camera. So when I put him in that bodybuilding environment with his background with acting, it just clicked. So he did have a persona in front of the camera, but it wasn't fake or anything. We just the subject matter of a lot of the episodes was constructed or planned beforehand. Like, 2 or 3 days before, we just sit on the phone for hours and talk about what kind of subject matters would be interesting. There's this technique, let's talk about that. He'd say, like, I really want to talk about, competing and this and that, and or just other things that are outside of bodybuilding. So we'd come up with a game plan before going to shoot, So it wasn't really scripted, but we discussed, the episodes at length before shooting.
So it's almost 5 years since he's gone. Do you remember the day?
Yeah.
You got a call? How did you know that
It was
he's
horrible.
gone?
Just that he ended up in the hospital. And I got a lot of flashbacks of me telling him, you shouldn't just really be this heavy at this point. Why are you this big if you're not doing the USAs anymore? Because his next goal was to compete in the USA, having won the California. So when he decided to not compete, you don't really need to be that big to look good on camera. His shoulders are still wide. So even if he loses a lot of muscle, he's still going to look great on camera. So I would tell him just, reduce a bit of the water retention, because he had a lot of difficulty breathing. Like when we drive around, I remember driving to San Diego once. It was like a 3-hour drive, and the whole time he was breathing very heavily.
Just for driving?
I was driving. He was just sitting.
Just sitting.
Just the way, just sitting now, he would breathe a lot. And I saw that in a lot of the bigger pros, the very heavy guys in the off season. I said, it's not really sustainable. You don't need to be this big for what we're doing. We're having fun on camera. Actually, if you look a little smaller and more cut, you might even look better on camera, right? Yeah. So he kind of agreed, but I don't think, just showing up at the expos, he wanted to be the big freak, because the freaks got the attention. So I think he liked being that big. So, I gave him my opinion. I told him, I think you should downsize a little bit. It's just not healthy, and you're getting older. You're not 20 years old anymore. So, but he didn't want to lose the size,
But the official version is that he didn't have a heart attack. He had something with his brain, right? Something exploded in his head.
I know what you know. So I just know he collapsed in his head. Either way, his heart was very, very enlarged. More than the regular athlete. I really can't speculate and say it'd be, unfair to his family and other friends. It's just sad that it happened. Maybe it could have been avoided, maybe not. I mean, it's not nice to speculate.
Speaking of these accidents, for the last few years, the Sean Roden, heart attack, right?
Yeah.
Cedric McMillan, heart attack. What do you think is going on? Why? They're in their 40s, not even 50s. And the old school guys, 70, 80 years old, they're alive, they're good.
My theory is this: back in the days, and I've talked to many of the guys from that era, from Frank Zane to Arnold, Samir, all those guys, they all had an off season. They would train like crazy those 6, 8, maybe 10 weeks before a show. After that, they didn't even want to see the gym. They just ate normally, and they were like almost sick of bodybuilding, So they just ate what they wanted, and they got off the gear. Whereas now I think there's more pressure to be always relatively in shape.
Because of Instagram, because of sponsorship and etc.
You got to keep up your persona. If they don't see you online, like, oh, what happened to him? He disappeared. Where is he? And if you're going to be showing yourself, you have to look good. So I think there's more pressure on the guys now, which is unfortunate. Whereas back in the day, we had magazines. Magazines came out every 30 days, and they would publish photos that they shot 6 months, maybe a year before. So you don't always have to be on. And, guys like Arnold, Frank Zane, Columbo, they all took as many photographs as they could.
At their peak level?
Exactly. And that would last Joe Weider a year, 2 years, maybe 3, even longer. So that was the key. They would never want to really get photographed, in the off season. And they just took all the photos as much as they could before the show, and that's what they used for their publicity, which is kind of smart. It gives you more longevity,
And those guys were never that heavy. They never reached 300 pounds. Well,
no.
Lou Ferrigno maybe
was
the
so
biggest.
tall,
He was huge.
Yeah. No, they never got that heavy. Well, there was no concept of eating every hour or two. Back then, it was 3, 4, maybe 5 meals, but it wasn't. They would never walk around with Tupperware and egg whites and chicken breasts and it was absurd, right? They'd go to eat, they'd eat like a horse, but an hour and a half later, they wouldn't have another meal, you know. So that concept of constantly force feeding, I think came around in like 1985, maybe early 80s, you know. There was new science out there saying, oh, you have to force feed your muscles all the time, just continuously provide them with, you know, all the carbohydrates, fats, and protein to build, which worked, because then, you know, the physiques got to a whole other level when you have that many nutrients always in your bloodstream, but your digestive system is always working. It never stops.
For 30 years.
Yeah, so that has to take a toll. So in a way, it's similar to obesity for the heart. Maybe worse, because if you're obese and you have a huge amount of fat, the heart doesn't really have to give that much blood flow to the fat. The fat's there, it's an energy storage. Whereas if it's pecs, if it's bicep, if it's real muscle, nutrients have to be there. There's veins in there, there's capillaries going back and forth. So that has to be fed. So the heart is always pumping. It's always has to feed that tissue. It's live tissue. So that's an extra burden on the heart, you know. But it's funny, I was thinking about this the other day, that all these weird theories of how bodybuilding it could be unhealthy in the 70s, and we didn't believe it, are actually became true. Like when GH first came out, it was called STH, somatotropic hormone. I remember just reading medical journals, because the bodybuilding world didn't know about it yet. There was a couple biologists in the gym in Italy who were studying this, like, oh, this makes you bigger, it makes you lean. Like, yeah, but look, side effects are your intestines grow because your intestines have, and several internal organs have more receptors to GH. Yeah. So you don't want to take it. You know, you're better off taking an anabolic steroid with low androgenic properties than GH, because your intestines will grow and might continue to grow even when you stop, and they don't shrink. Whereas if you put on muscle mass on your skeleton, it'll shrink, you know, when you stop. So you're going to get, you know, just big bloated intestines, and you don't want that. So nobody really started using it for many years, because we knew that the side effects were so severe that it wasn't really intelligent to use for bodybuilding. But then later on, it just caught on because it burned fat. It did add some muscle. But, you know, then we see all the big bellies that came out in those years. A little less now, I think. I think there's less usage now. But for a while, it was really, really bad.
But who was the pioneer of the GH and the insulin? The Dorian Yates? The 90s?
What do you mean by pioneer?
Who was the pioneer who got the biggest on the stage? Because I believe before the Dorian, Lee Haney, he was not that big. The Dorian was huge. Then was Ronnie, Jay Cutler.
When Lee Haney was competing, I don't remember seeing a lot of GH or any pros or even amateurs talking about GH. I can't speculate on what they took. It became more popular. When did Haney stop competing? 80, 89?
Late 80s, yeah.
84, he won the first one. So, yeah, late 80s, early 90s.
Yes.
Yeah.
The Dorian
was by 93, Dorian won first, right?
Something, yeah.
Yeah, I should know because I was there. The Olympians kind of blend in after a while. And there's no poster child for who popularized GH. That would be unkind to pin that on anybody. But those years, that's when it became more readily available and the price dropped quite a bit. So more and more people were using it. Just amateurs were using it, you know. I think that was a big downfall for bodybuilding, you know.
What do you think is worse, the GH or the insulin?
Well, most of the time they took it together. You know, it was testosterone, GH, and insulin together gave you the most results. Insulin, I remember a lot of friends who took it, their gut just really got bigger with the GH and insulin together. That was guaranteed big belly. It was just not a good combination. Insulin, you can die from it, you know, so you have to be really, really know exactly what you're doing scientifically to not die and get results. That can happen, but what are the chances of everybody being an expert on what they're injecting? There are guys that are still like in a coma now because they thought it was like testosterone. No, after my workout, I'd take a shot of insulin. You know, one guy went to sleep. He never woke up.
Yeah.
You know, it's happened just here in Los Angeles quite a few times. You know, so that's the risk that you take when you start dabbling with these things without being educated about them, you know, so.
Alex, you're an old school guy. Is that true that back in the days, in the 70s, 80s, you were working out for 3, 4, 5 hours a day? Or is it just a myth?
Serge Nubret told me to work out like that, and I thought, I just can't do it. He did work out like that.
4 hours?
Yes, but that's all he did. So he'd wake up in the morning, he'd eat. He would train maybe 2, 3 hours. Then he would sleep and eat in his gym upstairs. He'd wake up, then he'd train another 2 hours. So he did do chest for like an hour, you know, or just back for an hour, you know, straight. Light weights, but still the volume of work was just incredible, you know.
How did you
Well, when you're eating and sleeping, that's all you do though. So imagine if you just worked out in the morning, then you slept for 2, 3 hours, then you ate, then you worked out again, then you'd sleep again, then you sleep at night another 8 hours. He had the ability to just like, right now, you put him in a corner, he would fall asleep like within minutes. And my friends are like, how's this possible? This guy's not human. Like, we were just talking 2 seconds ago, and then I gotta go, you sleep now. And he'd close his eyes, and he'd start snoring. So either he's putting on an act, but no, he was really sleeping. So my friend was like, he's got to be taking something. How can you possibly sleep? What is he, like a horse? He just like sleep standing up. You know, then he'd wake up, like fresh, and start working out again. You know, he was a machine. It was very unusual. And the opposite of that was Mike Mentzer. Mike Mentzer would come to our gym in Rome also. I think he came twice. And he was opposite. You know, I'd ask him questions. You know, I'd tell him, yeah, Serge Nubret was here last month. And I'd tell him and he would just shake his head. And I'd say, well, how much protein do you eat? Because Serge was eating 5 kilos of steak, red meat a day.
5 kilos?
Kilos.
Not pounds.
Not pounds. That's what, 11 pounds? He did admit that 5 kilos may be a little too much for him. So I think he reduced it like
just
4.
A little too much.
4 kilos is like 8, 9 pounds. So it was either horse meat or beef. You know,
can you imagine his stomach?
Who?
Serge
Nubret? It was this big. He's half the size of yours and mine. It's just like a girl's waist. It was so small.
It was a machine.
It was just a freak of nature, yeah. I think maybe he didn't have any fiber with it. So not having the fiber, you don't bloat as much. It just kind of goes through you. Excuse me. But Mentzer was opposite. He would say, you know, nutrition's not important. Like, what do you mean it's not important? Like, it's not important, you know. The FDA says you should eat, you know, 60 grams of protein a day. That's what the FDA recommends. So let's eat like, you know, 10 grams more, 70 grams. Like 70 grams is like nothing. Like that's enough, you know. Your water's 75, your muscle's 75% water. Why don't you just like start, you know, drinking water? I said, well, it's a little different, you know, protein and water. You can't really compare that. So we'd have like those little discussions, you know, but I was 16, so I'm not gonna, you know, really confront my idol. I mean, I'm talking to Mike Mentzer, so I had this aura of the champion. So when I was talking to Nubret or Mike Mentzer, I was still in awe of them. I could never contradict more than a certain point, you know, because for me, they were just these gods that I looked up to. You know?
But that's impossible for Mike eating like 60, 70 grams.
That's exactly what he was doing.
Really?
Yeah, because he was staying at a friend's house. Like, what did he eat? We're like milking him for information. I don't know what's going on with my voice, I'm sorry. But he'd wake up in the morning, he said, well, what did he eat this morning? I said, he had a cappuccino, and he had a pastry and this bran muffin he wanted. Okay, that's what? 6 grams of protein from the cappuccino, because it's a glass of milk, and how much protein's in a muffin, and another 10. Okay, so he ate 12 grams of protein. That's what he ate. Then we worked out. He wanted rice. He had a little bit of the pasta that my wife made. He had a little bit of meat, so we're talking another like 20, 30 grams. So by the end of the day, he ate 70 grams of protein. And he was there for several weeks, and he did a posing exhibition at the Mr. Italy.
How is this possible?
And he looked pretty good. He was huge.
How is this possible?
I don't know. Bodybuilding is, as much as I know after 40, you know, years of in the sport, a lot of it's just how your body responds, you know.
The genetics.
I do think that if Mike Mentzer actually did eat more protein and had more protein supplements like we have now, like the isolate whey and the amino acids without adding the calories, I think he would have, with his genetic potential, he would have been a lot bigger. I really believe that, you know. Because he was almost starving himself, because he was training hard, you know. So I think under those conditions, his body would have absorbed and could have utilized more protein, I think.
So he had like 3 meals a day?
Yeah, he was like a normal person. And this was, I think, July, August, and the Olympia that year was 1980, was in September. So he was almost, pre-Olympia.
That's crazy.
I know, right? And then you get Serge Nubret, which is the opposite of the spectrum. To each his own. You got to figure out your own body. And we can have all these scientific theories, which are great, but, Serge trained so light, like your little kid could lift the same weights. But it was just constant, just bringing the blood in the muscle, just keeping it there for a long, long time. And just he had a lot of weak parts, but his chest and shoulders were just huge and ripped. The back was just so thick, it just looked like another set of pecs.
Like a turtle.
Like a turtle. It was just crazy.
But back in the day, the guys were much smaller, much lighter. The whole physique looked like they are big.
Yeah.
But comparing to normal people, they were not that big. The Arnold was kind of big because he was tall.
He was the biggest. Him and Farina were the biggest for a long time.
The biggest, I believe.
The difference in the old school guys was they looked amazing on stage. Whereas now the guys look great in the gym, then they get on stage, it's like, I don't see this big difference. Whereas back in the day, they look good in the gym, they look big, but once they're on stage, they perfected their poses and their angles so much, and they knew how to peak back then more, that there was a night and day difference between them throughout the year and on the Olympia stage. That's the big difference. Now, they're kind of always freaky, so I don't see a big difference. I can't say, I can't wait to see this guy on stage, he's going to look so much better. I kind of look better on Instagram and the gym, really.
So you like the golden age more than the modern era, right?
I know I sound ancient saying that. I like it now too. It's just, you have to accept the evolution of something, and it can't always be the 70s, like it can't always be now 2022. So things need to evolve. It's different. Different people in the sport. It was more fun back then, that's for sure.
Yeah, but
we
now
get to do more things.
The classic physique look much bigger than the guys back in the day.
Yeah.
Because the Chris Bumstead, he's huge.
Yeah.
He has incredible physique.
Well, that's the right direction, I think. I think the posing routine should be judged to a point, not as much as maybe the other rounds. There should be some points for presentation, because that's what really separates our sport from everything else. It shouldn't be just mathematical, just giving points on certain things and we add it up, well, therefore you're the winner. No, therefore nothing. If I'm judging a dive at the Olympics, one judge might give it a 10, one might give it a 9, depending on how he moved, there's a lot of different factors. That's why our sport, maybe it's not even a sport, maybe it's just an art form with an athletic preparation. I'm fine with that. It doesn't have to be a sport. We don't have to call it a sport. I think we shouldn't even call it a sport. It's a completely different thing. Whether you like it or not, whether you gravitate towards it, it depends on your personality, You might like powerlifting more because that's very mathematical. I lift 1 gram more than you, I'm better than you.
Yeah.
Whereas an art form, who's to say that the David by Michelangelo is not better than, something that Da Vinci created? It's an art form, and I'm okay with calling it just an art form.
So you've been training like for 40 years now, right? Even more, I believe.
More. I started when I was 12. I'm 48. So 46 years. Is that right?
Yeah. Tell me about the gyms in Italy back then. They were small, big, a lot of gyms in Rome, a few of them only.
When I started, there were no bodybuilding gyms, period. 1975, 76. There were martial arts gyms and gymnastica, which is just like a gymnastics kind of thing. And there was a weight room. So if you're into bodybuilding, you're in the weight room. That was our little bodybuilding gym, and always in some other kind of complex. So when first gyms came out, I'd say 78 or so, just bodybuilding gyms, it was like, we get our own gym, and I started at home just with the extension cables and the rubber bands and everything else. I made my own weights. So I go into a real gym with a real leg extension or a lat machine was just like, it was just heaven, we would just spend hours. It was just such a great environment to be in. What was the question? I started reminiscing.
You answered, yeah.
I did. Okay.
You got your first sponsorship with the supplement company.
Yes.
And you told that the flavor is not good, right? And they told you
it was crap. I started when I was 12 or 13. I'd say by the time I was 15, I was such an expert on bodybuilding. I'd never met anybody on the same level because I just devoured any kind of information. When I first discovered bodybuilding magazines in '76, I started buying all the old ones from the early '70s and '60s. I had to buy every single magazine ever published from America. I spent a fortune. My parents thought I was crazy. So I read so much that in 3 or 4 years, I had so much knowledge that when I got the sponsorship, I was called WEI, W-E-I. And I had just won Mr. Italy. They sponsored me for $600, 600 lira. So that's like $500-600 for a lifetime sponsorship.
for a lifetime.
I was happy to get it. Like I just signed. I didn't read a contract. I just signed it and I got the check. And I thought that was a lot of money. So I was happy. But the ingredients, it was just soy. And it wasn't even soy protein. You know, the difference between soy protein. This is soy flour. So basically, it's just soybeans ground up, and they added some vanilla, and it was tasted horrible, but that's okay. We didn't care how it tasted. But I knew that soy protein is, you know, there's no methionine. It wasn't a complete protein. Yeah. I mean, any idiot. I mean, our teacher at school was telling us, this is a complete protein, this is a non-complete protein. So everybody knew this. And these guys were selling it to bodybuilders and said, you know, we should add maybe some amino acids to make it at least complete if you want to use the soy, because I knew soy was very cheap, you know, and they couldn't, you know, afford whey protein, which was barely coming out.
Was it at least instant-sized?
No, it's flour. If you buy soy flour, you add some vanilla extract, that's the product that was being sold for a lot of money in the pharmacies. You know, getting in a pharmacy in Italy is a big deal. Have you seen pharmacies in Italy?
No.
Oh, there's marble, there's gold. It's just like they're opulent. You know, there's real pharmacists that they're like, you have to be the top of the line to be there because you're giving medical advice. Yeah. You ask a pharmacist, it's like going to one of the best doctors. These guys are really well prepared. So if you get a product in there, you know, it should be, you know, of value.
The thing.
In '76, I guess it wasn't, because they were selling soy flour. So I try to word it very eloquently and very politely. They cancel my contract. Like, this guy's trouble. Like, no, we're not changing anything. And like, okay, fine.
Did you get your $500?
Oh yeah.
So
yeah.
At least this.
I was happy. Yeah. And I got in the magazines. You know, so I was already in the magazines. That's how I got the job, because there was no internet, of course. You know, and companies didn't really go to bodybuilding shows. So whoever's in the magazines, that was like a catalog of, oh, let's use this guy, let's hire this guy. You know, that's how it worked. You know, if you weren't in the magazines, you didn't exist.
Really?
Yeah, there was no other outlet. You're not on the radio. You're not really on TV, just a little bit. You're not in a movie, so where are they going to see bodybuilders? You wouldn't go looking for them in a bodybuilding gym. So you had to be in a magazine just to be relevant and have any kind of career. You just had to be in a magazine.
So back in that day, people that were reading the magazines, they wanted to look alike the guys from the covers, right?
Oh, sure.
Because right now, I believe people do not want to look like 300 pounds of muscle.
It's too extreme where it's not appealing anymore. Yeah. You know, and it's not just the pounds, it's the way your physique's put together. If you're 300 pounds and your waist is like Serge Nubret and your shoulders are that wide, you know, you're going to look a lot better than someone who's just really stocky with a really wide waist. If you put so much muscle on your obliques, you know, on your lower pecs and or your quads, just aesthetically, just the silhouette is going to be different from someone who has an X-frame. Yeah. You know, there are big bodybuilders that weigh a lot, but they look great, like Tony Freeman, you know, the X-Man. He's, you know, Flex Wheeler, if you go really look at his size, he was huge. You know, his bones are very small, but the muscle bellies, they were big and full. He just had a very small waist, very wide shoulders. So we talk about his aesthetics, but he wasn't a small guy. You know, when he was in shape, his arms are huge, chest,
yeah, but
deltoids.
What a terrible story with the Flex, the things that are happening to him right now.
Yeah, I'm just talking about his physique at the time as far as aesthetics, you know, yeah. I'm generalizing.
But I believe he admitted himself that he was almost the first one that used Synthol.
Yeah, synthol was just a really bad thing to happen to bodybuilding. And it stemmed from the usage of aceclene. And aceclene is, or was, an Italian pediatric steroid. I don't know if you heard of this. Not many people know about it. It was a pediatric steroid that was only anabolic with zero androgenic effects. So you could take like a truckload and nothing would happen to you. You know, they give it to little kids that couldn't eat much.
Got it.
It was in pill form and in water-based injectable. For whatever reason, this water-based injectable, when you inject it into your muscle, it swells up. It's like a little inflammation.
And it stays there.
And it stays there for at least a couple days. So if you knew how to do it right in your, only bodybuilders can discover stuff like this, right? No doctor would like experiment. When you inject it, it forms a little lump. So if you put it on your peak of the bicep, if you don't have a peak on your bicep and you put it right in the right spot, it'll cause a little bump that looks very natural for, I'd say, a day or two. After that, it swells and it just becomes inflated and it looks horrible. So a lot of the pros and some top amateurs knew how to do it. So basically, you're just injecting water in the muscle and you're just filling it up. So if you do it a certain way, it does enhance the physique, you know.
And no one's gonna notice.
If you did it right, no, it just looked like, all of a sudden you have a peak.
For sure, no one noticed.
No, but only a few bodybuilders knew about it in Europe, and then it came over to America. Yeah. So the whole idea of localized injections came from aceclene, you know, and that didn't last long because they took it off the market. And then when it disappeared from the market, I think someone in the States created an oil-based, which is very different. So that lingers in your muscle. I think it does more damage. It's not something that just easily goes away. Aceclene came from a lab, from a pharmaceutical company that was tested, and it was relatively safe, you know, for that use. This other stuff was just oil that somebody made. I don't know, maybe in the garage. Who knows?
Yeah,
you know,
exactly.
It wasn't a pharmaceutical company that created it. So, you know, it just started being abused. It wasn't just like a little bit here and there, and just people just started putting so much. I have no idea what or if Flex Wheeler, you know, did that.
I believe he told it. He told it.
He did?
Yeah, he admitted.
Synthol or aceclene?
Yeah, the synthol.
Okay. That I think damages the fibers over time. Because I know pros that did it over and over again, certain muscles, and the scar tissue would actually like deteriorate the fibers. It's just a bad idea, period.
But then there's synthol, the natural oil. Then there's a fake synthol that you don't know what's inside.
Oil? What's a natural oil?
That's not fake, I believe.
But what's it made of?
I don't remember right now, but I've heard some stories that people buy the synthol much cheaper, and it's much worse than the original synthol. But then we got the PPM, the PMM. Yeah. That's even much worse. That's idiocracy.
Yeah, when that stuff came out, I was just kind of getting out of the whole bodybuilding. It was just too freakish for me. It just didn't make sense. Again, I had so much knowledge. I knew what it could do, you know. Again, this is stuff that didn't come from a lab. It didn't come from a pharmaceutical company with pharmacists testing it on humans.
Yeah.
It was just some people making oil, people putting oil in their body. I mean, I am not that educated enough on synthol to talk about.
These are the things that men use. And what do women use? Do you have something? Do they use some steroids as well, just for burning fat and staying lean, to have that muscle left on their bodies? We were talking about the competitive side of sport. Yeah,
women started probably in the early 80s taking some things. So I have to assume that today they still do, yeah.
But that's terrible for a woman.
You're injecting a male hormone in the female body. It's like giving you estrogen. So something's going to happen, you know, whether you want that or not. I mean, you're injecting male hormone or something that's male hormone based in a female. So
Well, females and males do have hormones like estrogen and testosterone.
Not in the same balance, though.
Not the balance, yeah, exactly.
You have a bit more testosterone than your wife that I just saw. So,
Do you?
even though she has testosterone also, obviously, and you have some estrogen, of course.
Because without the estrogen, I would look like, and I would
Well, it's a
feel
balance,
like,
you know. Like Samir said, it's all about balance. You know, I keep saying that, and he's right. And the older I get, the more I believe Samir's right. It's all about balance. Whether you're talking about this stuff, your posing routine, your body, your aesthetics, your training. When you have that right balance, you can accomplish great things. When something's out of whack, you're gonna fail. You know.
Let's get back to to the early days. So you were in Italy, you were competing, you were working out hard, you were reading the magazines from the US.
Yeah.
When was the time that you got an idea you gotta get to the US, to LA?
Almost immediately. Yeah. When I saw Joe Weider's magazines with the guys on the beach and the girls, and I thought that's it. I mean, I liked Italy, but I was kind of longing for Australia, just living by the beach and that kind of sunshine and warmth. California seemed like a better version of Australia. And if that was the Mecca, that's where Joe Weider was, that's where Arnold was, Columbo was there, Frank Zane, all my idols were there. The epitome of bodybuilding was in Los Angeles. So I felt that if I went there, I'd be accepted for what I'm doing. Whereas in Italy, I just was not accepted. You know, I'd have to cover up just going in the center.
Did you felt that way?
Yeah, the first time, my son just asked me this. When I was 14, I was just walking down the street on a major street in Rome, and this little girl goes, "Look at this boy, look at his muscles." I'm like, she's talking about me, the muscles, people are noticing what I'm doing.
That's great.
So I was shocked and happy at the same time, but they were so in awe of me, almost not scared, but like, you know, what kind of person is this? And then one girl says, "What do you do? Like, what do you do to get this?" I said, "Oh, I just lift weights and stuff." Like, wow, they're like so mesmerized. And I wasn't probably that big at 14. I started at 12. By 14, I was gaining rapidly, but I was still on the skinny side. But for Italy, that was unheard of. No other athlete had that kind of muscle. But then as I got bigger and bigger, people just always staring, always looking, always like, "Oh, this guy."
But in a bad way, right?
In Italy, unfortunately, yes, yeah. I'd say 8 times out of 10, they're like, yeah, you know. So the guys, I don't know if they felt threatened. They just, you know, girls are just kind of like weirded out. Some liked it, some didn't. You know, some were like, "Oh, that's too much," or at least that's what they would say to their boyfriend. So you never really knew how you would come across. So a lot of times I would just cover up because I don't want to be bothered. I'm just going to the gym or I'm going to school. You know, I don't want the whole bus turning around looking at my arms. I would just try to cover up as much as possible. Whereas California, like, these guys are walking around in tank tops in the supermarket. I can't walk around in a tank top in the supermarket in Italy. I mean, everybody would just like gawk and stare, you know, you'd be like this freak. Whereas California, you're accepted. Like, this is like bodybuilding heaven, which I think it was at the time. You know, so I had this longing to be in California, I think, for acceptance. And in a way that it really was. Because here you had like the huge, you know, football players or basketball players. The whole species in America was bigger than the Italian race, so to speak, you know, putting it bluntly. It's just a bigger frame, you know. Just like there's a big difference between like Italians and Germans. You know, the German tourists that come to Italy, we see them a mile away. They just look differently, you know. And the American bodybuilders, just the American population was just a lot bigger and thicker than the skinny, short Italian guys, you know. So I wasn't as much of a freak here, you know. I just kind of blended in, which is great.
So when you were in Italy, then in Australia, you got keen on photography, right?
Yeah.
You got this camera from your dad. You were making...
As a little kid, I just loved photography. But when I started bodybuilding, all my other passions just got put aside. I started doing really bad in school. All I wanted to do was bodybuilding. I mean, I put all my eggs in one basket. That's all I could think about. That's all I wanted to be, and I didn't want to do anything else. And I was just obsessed with bodybuilding, and I found that one passion that I really loved, and I just that's all I could focus on.
And what was your plan going to the US, competing?
Initially, yeah. I think I could have become genetically. I could have become a good pro on the upper body. I just realized that my quads didn't have the genetic potential to get that big. And in those years, late 80, like 86 to 88, the big quads were in vogue. Like you had DeMeo, Gaspari, Platz was still around.
Platz.
Like even amateur shows, there were guys with, so-so upper bodies and huge legs, they were winning shows. Whereas in Europe, it's different. They had so-so legs and bigger upper bodies. They were winning shows. They were winning Mr. Universe and Mr. Europe. So it's different. Like I could get my calves big, I could get my hamstrings big. My legs just couldn't. I had the shape was exactly like Arnold. So I didn't have that big sweep. I didn't have all that muscle hanging from the knee. And that what was in vogue in America at the time. I thought, I can't do this. For me to get that big, I would have to triple what I was taking and just dedicate myself to bodybuilding. And then what? Even if you win a pro show or even become top 5, after that, there's no longevity in it. So I kind of got disappointed in the whole competing thing, So that's when I started photography and doing commercials, little bit parts on TV at the same time. And that was a lot more fun because I could still be a bodybuilder. I still trained like I was, competing. I still ate clean, and I had that bodybuilding lifestyle. But you walk on a set, and everyone's like, "Oh wow, this guy looks amazing." Whereas by bodybuilding standards, like, "Oh, he's got no triceps," or "His upper pecs isn't as good as his lower." You'd be, torn apart that way. But in front of a producer or a director or a casting director, "God, this guy's great. He's Mr. Italy. Yeah, let's book him." So I was doing a lot of commercials. And on camera, you find the right angle, and you look great, right? With the photography, I felt like I found my calling with photography and doing a little bit of acting. I thought that's when I was my most happiest. I feel.
Have you ever gotten into the extreme training with your quads?
I have to say, I never trained my lower body as hard as I should have. I can admit that now, I just love training chest. I love training lats. When I did lats and I got pumped, my lats got twice as big. I just looked like a jumbo. There's so much blood would go in there. I just loved that feeling. So as a young guy, obviously you gravitate towards that. Doing squats and quads, no, I'd always get kind of sick. And it's just training legs, for the hardcore bodybuilders, they know it's the hardest thing. Squats are hard. I love training calves. I love training leg biceps. That's why my leg biceps were getting big and getting good because I love that feeling of the contraction. I didn't love the contraction in the quad. I don't like feeling the contraction in my triceps as much as my biceps. I like all the pulling movements, like anything
you can squeeze the muscle.
Yeah, but the pressing stuff, my arms are so long that it's not really conducive to being very powerful. So I loved all the pulling movements. I loved that feeling of contracting. Pushing, I didn't like to push. That's just, maybe I was more introverted as a person. If you want to dig deep psychologically, maybe that's why I wasn't extroverted. So other guys were great at pushing. Guys in my gym back in the day, they would bench press, they would press like crazy. But they couldn't pull. They didn't have the strength in pulling biceps or lats. They were more they like the pushing movements. I think it's just the morphology of your body, the way it's built,
Speaking of pump, so right now people are taking the AAG, the arginine, the citrulline, etc., just for pump, not for the energy, but for the pump. What did you take back in the 80s, 90s? Was there a AAG that time, the citrulline? No.
I'm heavily involved in the supplement business right now, industry. So there's a lot of these myths going around that certain amino acids will just create a pump just by taking it.
Amino acids.
And it's BS. And if it does happen, it might happen for 15 to 30 seconds, That doesn't give you a pump when you're training chest. There are certain things that give you a pump. If that's what your goal is, the important things for you to get a pump are water, how much you're hydrated. Is there water in the blood volume?
Salt.
with potassium. So the mineral balance, sodium, potassium is very important. And glycogen, carbohydrates. I mean, talk to any bodybuilder who's on low carb, they're probably not getting pumped, you know. If you're dehydrated and you took a diuretic, you're not getting much of a pump unless you start eating Snickers bars. So those three things will cause a pump. Does citrulline cause a pump? Maybe a little bit, but is it a prolonged pump that'll last your workout? You know, just taking citrulline, thinking that, oh, it's clinically dosed at 6 grams and this will give me a pump, whereas 1 gram will not. That is complete BS. Somebody send me those studies showing that 6, 8, 10 grams of citrulline will give more blood flow to that working muscle more than not taking it or taking a little less. I don't think those studies exist. I'd love to read them. You know, maybe I'll have a different opinion. But just taking an amino acid, thinking that's gonna give you a pump, I wish that were true. I think every competitor would love to just take amino acids, step on stage, and be pumped.
So that's more psychological thing? You take the pre-workout, you think you're gonna get a pump?
Nitric oxide is real. You know, it's a gas. It does enlarge your veins, but it's temporary.
Yeah, but the predecessors of nitric oxide are arginine and citrulline, right?
Right. But for bodybuilding purposes, how long is your vessels going to be enlarged? And when you take, say, you know, a gram of arginine or 2 grams, when does that enlarge your veins? Tell me what time, how many seconds afterwards, because you have to time it then. And how long is that vein going to be enlarged for how long? Nobody knows this, so it's a great theory. I take it myself. You know, it's almost like an insurance. You know,
Got it.
It does have a lot of other benefits, but just I don't think people should think that just taking a huge amount of citrulline or arginine or AKG will give you a long-lasting pump in the gym. You need to have water in there. You need to be very well hydrated. You need some kind of glycogen, preferably. And you'll still get a pump. You know, blood will still go there because the muscle's working. But ideally, you should be full of glycogen, you know. And the sodium, potassium, you gotta figure that out. You know, when I take potassium, I have a little bit of carbs in a drink, I'll get a massive pump. You know, it's just mechanics. Your blood volume is bigger. So you're working that muscle, you just feel it's a big difference. So I do take the citrulline, I do take the AKG. I just think it's irresponsible to say, you know, 8 grams is the clinically approved dose that will guarantee you a pump. And it's just not the case. It's just, it's BS, you know. And again, I'm in the industry. I work behind the scenes with a lot of different brands, you know. And sometimes I try to correct them on the wording, like, you know, you can't guarantee a pump because you have this amount of product. It helps. If it didn't help, I wouldn't take it. Trust me, I'm not going to put it. I'm 58, so what I put in my body, I just think about, you know, what's it going to do to my liver and kidneys and everything else. So I do take it. It has a lot of benefits. I do feel a little better. Maybe it's psychological. I don't know. I like taking citrulline. Even arginine, though, you know, they say it's not as good as citrulline. I like taking a mixture of that in my intra-workout. You know, I look forward to it. I look forward to taking my pre-workout, then my intra-workout when I work. It's my ritual. It helps my workout. It's like a trigger. It helps me, so I will take it. It's just, don't rely just on that. You know, having a good workout is more than just taking one supplement.
So for the pre-workouts, if the salt and the potassium are so important, why nobody gets potassium in the pre-workouts? Because of kidneys and etc.
The ones I formulated all have potassium. But I think it's very important.
Human body needs potassium twice as more as
I take extra
sodium,
potassium.
right?
Yeah, for sure. I wouldn't supplement on too much sodium. You're going to get sodium just eating in this modern world anyway,
but potassium we get from the food, like sweet potato has potassium.
Yeah, how many bananas? Yeah, I know, but how much? You know, I'd rather pop 3 pills that have 300 milligrams of potassium.
Yeah.
Not in a tablet. I like the capsule, knowing that, you know, I'm good with potassium. Potassium for bodybuilding was crucial in the 70s and 80s. Everybody talked about it. Serge Nubret talked about it. Every competitor, we would go to the pharmacy and get potassium tablets.
Like a supplement.
Like a supplement, yeah. Because we knew that potassium is extremely important for the contraction. It seems like no one talks about it anymore now. You know, they talk about the citrulline so much more. Potassium is a very essential mineral for any kind of strength athlete.
But sodium and potassium are responsible for the hydration.
Yeah.
If you get the wrong balance, you're going to be dehydrated.
Well, the theory is potassium keeps water inside the cell and sodium on the outside.
Yes.
So in bodybuilding, in our bodybuilding world, it makes sense to keep the water inside the cell. So having more potassium than sodium. Sodium is abundant in our diet. It's hard to eliminate sodium. Potassium, not so much. Again, how many bananas are you going to eat? I'd rather take a couple pills.
So the more sodium you get, the more potassium you got to get, right? The more
sodium you intake,
get,
the more potassium you should take. Absolutely. I think it's like 2 to 1 or something.
2 to 1, exactly.
Yeah.
Nobody talks about it. I don't know why.
Things go in and out of style in bodybuilding and maybe just in pop culture in general for no apparent reason. Potassium is super important. Look, in the bodybuilding world in Europe, we knew about vitamin D. And we knew that it wasn't even a vitamin. I'd say 86, 88, we were talking about it with, guys that are much smarter than me who had like biochemistry degrees. And like, yeah, vitamin D, you guys should take vitamin D. They would tell us like vitamin D. I don't know why it's even a vitamin, one guy said. Like, this is a hormone,
Yes.
So take the vitamin D and definitely potassium. Now vitamin D just popped out and became more popular after COVID, But how many bodybuilders are talking about how important vitamin D is? I think it's also important in testosterone production, so.
The bone health, the testosterone, the immune system,
for men
all
and
in
women,
all.
Kids, for sure.
So back in the day, what was the first supplement that you used and you felt like, whoa, this is the shit?
That I felt?
That was the protein, not from soybeans?
Not from soybeans. Protein, when I started taking protein shakes throughout the day, because I was never a big eater. I could eat a lot of carbs. I would love like cookies or pasta or lasagna. I could eat that all day long. But the protein, just eating the steak and the eggs, that was a burden for me. So when I started adding the shakes with that extra protein, that's when I really got a lot bigger. That really helped. So I'd say the whey isolate shakes and creatine. When I started taking creatine, like in the days where you have, the potassium and you have the carbs and you drank a lot of water and you had creatine.
The monohydrate? Yeah.
Yeah, the pumps are just like, as basic as that is, that's what I really felt.
From 1 to 10, comparing to the modern era of flavors, what flavor was that? 1, 2?
Initially, there was no flavor. I mean,
just the original
Bill Phillips
flavor
came
of
out
milk?
with a flavored. Yeah, it was like a lemon lime. It was okay. If you're really into bodybuilding, it's irrelevant. It's irrelevant how. A lot of times we just clog your nose and gulp it so you wouldn't taste it.
Was that bad?
It was. Yeah, I mean, we would have taken anything that would make us grow. Me and my buddies were taking amino acids that were they were made for phlebotomy. Like the ones that would go down in your vein from a hospital. This guy would take them from the hospital. He would steal them. in the traditional Italian way. He'd steal these cases of amino acids.
He borrowed, okay?
Okay.
Let's assume this.
No, he stole them. And he gave them to us. He wasn't selling. He gave them to us,
This was a Robin Hood.
I know. He was. So he'd give us these amino acids, which was pure, free-form amino acids, but it had, I think, all 22 amino acids. It wasn't just the 9.
That's perfect.
It went straight in your vein. For people who were in a coma, they were dying, they couldn't eat.
Yeah.
You'd at least have the protein that way. So it was like the purest of the pure, but they smelled like rotten egg. It wasn't made for consumption. It wasn't made to drink. You could drink them because they're pure. These went in the veins. So we would drink it. Yeah, we're not going to stick it in it. Yeah, no. So we would drink it, but it was putrefied, rotten egg. So we'd just like clog our nose and go down. But you had like 2-3 mouthfuls. We're talking 10, 20, 30 grams of amino acids.
That's a lot.
That's a massive amount, and that really worked. So back in the day, the taste was irrelevant. I don't see that today. Now, if the pre-workout isn't as fruity and as sweet as you want, they'll return it because
exactly what it is.
These kids are soft.
Back in the day, did you drink coffee before the workouts?
Oh, for sure.
Espressos?
Coffee.
How much?
And quite a bit. I'd say 4 or 5. If you're dieting just like all day long, just coffee.
Half a gram of caffeine a day?
Oh, probably at least, yeah, maybe 800-900, yeah.
900?
Yeah, because each espresso would have at least 70 to 80 milligrams.
Yeah.
So coffee all day long, yeah.
So,
But we were on like a meat and water or fish and water diet. So you needed all the help you can get. You know, fish and water is tough. You know, meat and water is really tough. But fish and water is just, you're dying.
no sodium?
Yeah.
Just a little
No,
bit?
we reduced the sodium just like 2-3 days before. No, you wanted the sodium. You wouldn't be able to train without that sodium and potassium, without the minerals.
Yeah.
Just eating fish, after 3-4 days, you wouldn't even be able to train. It was just so hard. But we got really, really cut. You know, you'd lose too much muscle mass. It's not the best way to lose fat, but it worked.
So the most dangerous, I believe, drug is diuretics right now, right?
Well, anything that you can take and you can die from, I would say, yeah.
So back in the day, did you use diuretics before the competition?
We would use Lasix with potassium, always with potassium. Even the pharmacist would say, take it with potassium. So with the potassium, you know, your heart wouldn't stop, you know. Yeah. We were taking very small doses, though. I mean, my mom takes like 10 milligrams a day, like all year round. And I remember taking 5 milligrams, I think it was 5 milligrams. And we were just like be depleted, like, oh my God, I'm dying, just with no water and training. So, yeah, we take potassium with it, but it was pretty harsh. I hated taking it, even though it gave you results, but it would be like once a year, twice a year. Yeah.
But back in the day, the bodybuilders were not that cut as, for example, the Dorian was or the Rani was in the 90s, in the early
no, there were cut people.
2000s.
In Europe, there were people who were shredded.
Really?
Oh, for sure. Especially at the NABA universe, a lot of Japanese athletes, a lot of...
because of their genetics?
They dieted more. Everyone was on the just meat diet. That's what they called the carnivore diet. I mean, Serge Nubret only ate steak. I don't think he even take it's just steak all day long. Either beef or horse meat.
But that's horrible.
Zero carbs. It would get you cut. Now, the amount of anabolics he was taking to maintain that size, I can only guess.
But health-wise, it was terrible, right?
It can't be good for you. No, just
no
not
fiber, no fruits,
no
no
fiber,
vegetables.
no fruit. No fruits.
What about the fruits?
Fruit, definitely no.
Did you eat fruits back in the day?
We thought it would make you fat, so we cut out all the fruit. Yeah.
So veggies and meat and fish.
Pre-contest?
No, the off-season?
Oh, off-season, just eat as much as you want of everything.
Oh, yeah. Pasta, pizzas.
Everything, yeah. Yeah.
Got it. So, what do you like most right now in the bodybuilding? The competitors, the competitiveness, because these guys are huge. The thing that right now we've got Big Ram 2 times Mr. Olympia, right?
Yeah.
So it switched from the Phil Heath, the 7-time Mr. Olympia. What is it like? What do you like the most from the bodybuilding at this moment?
Do I like about bodybuilding?
Do you still watch the Mr. Olympia, the Arnold Classic?
I still shoot it. Yeah. What do I like about it?
The expo, because back in the day there were no expos like this.
I think expos are amazing. I think expo is like where you really see the industry. The state of the art of the industry gets exposed, no pun intended, at the expo that year. You know, you go to the Arnold and you go to the Olympia Expo especially. I think the Olympia Expo is really an indication of where we're at in the industry, because you see all the new brands. You see the old brands that are still around. You see the new champions, the new fitness girls, the new type of marketing that comes out. You really have your finger on the pulse of the industry at the Mr. Olympia Expo. And I think it wasn't really an expo. I was at the 1980 Mr. Olympia when Arnold won. And there was like a mini expo. It was more a bunch of the champions sitting there with their 8x10s, selling the 8x10s. And there was a few little supplement brands and vitamins, and there was an equipment brand. So it wasn't really an expo, but it was an area where, you know, everybody congregated. And I thought, this is just amazing, because, you know, Arnold was there, Ken Waller was there, Frank Zane, Colombo, Reg Park. It was just beautiful to see everybody in one small area. And that's the feeling I get when I see the Olympia Expo. You know, you see a lot of the champions there and the business people and the magazines. Well, there aren't many magazines anymore, but I think the expos are the fun part of our industry, you know, maybe more so than the contest.
So speaking of Frank Zane, you mentioned you're making a film, a movie about him.
Yes.
How old is Frank? 70?
He's
late 70s,
79. Yeah, I think he'll be 80 soon.
He looks good. He's fresh, right?
Yeah, yeah.
The movie is coming out this year or next year?
I want to finish it this summer now. COVID really set things back. Just we weren't expecting COVID to delay it, you know, a year and a half. But we have all the footage. I'm still editing, working on the music. It should be good. There's, you know, it's the only documentary that really depicts his life from when he was a little kid to now. You know, he says some pretty controversial things there.
For instance, for example?
I don't want to spoil it, but he's very open about what he thinks of people and situations.
He has his own opinion.
And now it's like, he's Mr. Olympia, he's Frank Zane. What are they going to do?
He's a legend.
He's not getting canceled, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, he's a legend. I just love talking to a guy. Every time I just milk him for as much information as I possibly can until he's exhausted. And so we shot 3 times. So for me, as a kid who grew up with, you know, Zane and Arnold as his idols, yeah, it's great. And he gave me some old Super 8 films that no one's seen before of just him hanging out with Christine. I thought, oh, this is just great. You know, it's awesome stuff. But, you know, you have to really love bodybuilding. You have to love that era to appreciate him. Because a lot of kids do like that era. Some kids don't. They're like, oh, he wasn't that big. Mr. Olympia. Oh, this guy over here, he's bigger than, you know, these guys on Instagram are bigger than him.
It's not about the
He's
size.
an underrated champion. Like, he won the Olympia 3 times against, you know, many different odds. He was up against Robbie Robinson, who was just like a genetic freak. He was freaking amazing.
He's still a freak.
He's still a freak, yeah. But when in the 70s, 77, 78, he was amazing, you know. So he didn't like beat nobody. He beat the best. He beat the people who showed up.
Yeah.
You know, 3 times in a row. You know, and if he didn't have the accident and Arnold didn't show up at the 80, I think he would have won for the 4th time, you know.
But he was a small guy.
Well, he had the accident, so he lost a lot of the muscle. You know,
but
that year.
even when he won the Olympia, he was a small guy.
I mean, to win Mr. Olympia, and think of the past Mr. Olympia, Serge Oliva, Arnold, you know, Colombo, even Larry Scott. These are all huge guys. So for him to win with his structure, he had to chisel that bone structure as much as possible just to create a perfect package and presentation that they just had to give him, you know, the title.
If you'd meet him in a suit, he would never say.
Well, he says, like, you know, when I was dressed, I was like a normal guy. I mean, sometimes I'd show up at seminars like, and I'd hear people like, this guy's Mr. Olympia. this guy's Mr. Olympia. Then like 30 days later, you know, he'd show up and it's just like the most perfect thing you've ever seen, which is what counts. Who cares if you're walking around in a suit and you don't, you know, you're not being judged at the supermarket. You know, you're not being judged at the gym. You're being judged on stage. So if you're intelligent, you put all your energy and focus on that one day. Yeah. That one day you have to be perfect. And that's what he perfected, you know.
That's going to be your 4th movie, right?
Yeah.
So the first one was The Driver that got not canceled, but it didn't
it didn't go through.
Show up. Will it show up?
No.
No.
They're not making it.
So the third one was the Subs the movie.
Well, I consider Subs to be the first.
Oh, so that's the
first documentary, Subs.
What's the second? Okay.
Go ahead. The second one was Access Muscle. That's a series.
Yeah.
And the third one is now Frank Zane. Yeah.
What's the purpose of the Subs the movie? Because what I heard, what I saw, was the message in the end that the FDA or who is going to rule this industry, and it's about to ruin the whole industry.
Well, they've been trying for many years, you know. See, the issue is that a supplement is not a drug. You know, it comes in a pill form, in a tablet form, in a powder form, just like a drug, but it's not. It's a food supplement.
Yeah.
You cannot sell a supplement as a supplement if it doesn't exist in the food source already. Like, you can sell powdered creatine only because in a steak you have that creatine.
Yeah.
You know, you can sell vitamin C in a gummy form or powder or chewable in a tablet because we already have vitamin C in an orange. So you have the choice. You can eat 40 oranges or you can take a gram of vitamin C. It's our choice, you know. So they're not drugs, you know. They're not pharmaceutical. And the big difference also is that a supplement cannot have a side effect. If creatine causes depression, and you can prove that, creatine is going to be off the market. It's going to be by prescription only. Yeah. You know, if vitamin C makes you grow a second head, you know, that's a side effect, and we're not going to have vitamin C anymore. A supplement cannot have a severe side effect.
Yeah, but caffeine can, if the amount is like 2 grams, 5 grams a day, one dosage, you get 5 grams of caffeine. I believe the heart won't be happy.
Right, but caffeine's already, it exists in nature,
that's true,
you know, and you'd have to like...
Tea, coffee, etc.
Yeah, so you can like keep drinking as much as you possibly can till you overdose on caffeine. I know that one kid bought 500 grams of caffeine online and he died from a heart attack.
A few years
That's the least that's going to happen. I'm surprised it didn't happen instantly. I mean, but still, you know, a food supplement has to come from the food that we already have. You know, it's GRAS, G-R-A-S, generally regarded as safe already because we consume it. It's just delivered in a different form.
So and the drugs are chemicals. You get it in the lab.
Right, and those have side effects, and you have to list them, you know.
So what they want to do is they want to get the supplements only prescription only, right? You get to the doctor, you say,
I don't think they'll ever be successful in doing that.
That's madness. Imagine you going to the doctor.
It was like that in Italy, though, for a while. You could not buy vitamin C without a prescription in a pharmacy. We're talking even the early 80s.
That's mafia thing, right? That's corruption, totally. If you own
from the Ministry of Sanitation, from the Italian government, because you could have 900 milligrams of vitamin C, you know, in a product, but you can't have 1 gram. So anything over a gram is a prescription. Laws that make absolutely no sense. I know, right?
You can take 2 caps.
It makes no sense whatsoever. So it's ridiculous. So I think it's always money behind it. You know, it's such a lucrative business, and there's so much consumption. You know, just North America just consumes so many supplements. Not just, you know, athletes, from, you know, little old ladies to little kids to, you know, if you can't get the nutrition that you need from food, which is more and more the case, you know.
Which is impossible to do. The omega-3s, you can get enough of them.
I know, and you know, not everyone likes to eat fish 3-4 times a week. You know, I do, but a lot of people rarely eat fish. So where are you going to get your omega-3s, which are, you know, so important to your health? So we need the supplements, and it should be our choice. You know, if I want to take a capsule or eat salmon, it's up to me. You know, it's not aspirin, it's not an antidepressant, it's not a chemical made in a lab that I need a prescription for. So it should be my choice on what I want to put in my body. If it's a natural substance, you know.
Yeah, but at the same time we got beer, whiskey, and etc.
Yeah, that's a whole other. Yeah.
You get 21 years old in the US, right? You can get everything you want.
At 21, you can drink.
In Europe, it's beer. It's 18. In Lithuania, 21 for vodka and etc.
Yeah.
So that's madness. That's what causes the depression, the suicides, all this, the shit, the DUI, and etc.
Trust me, you're preaching to the choir. Yeah, I agree.
How are you involved in the supplement industry? You're an investor. You're a co-founder.
I just started working for so many brands back in the day. I mean, I worked for EAS, Metrics, Muscle Tech. I mean, I shot the first photo shoot for Hydroxycut, you know, Muscle Tech.
Yeah.
When they only had one product.
That's 90s, right?
I think 92 or 93, maybe 93. And I remember Bob Kennedy calling me up and saying, hey, this kid who works in my store is starting a new supplement brand. I got some photo shoots for you to do. And I remember shooting Hydroxycut, the bottle, and there were spelling mistakes on the label. So I called him, like, dude, I'll shoot this if you want me to, but this needs to be corrected. It was a punctuation mistake. I'm not sure exactly what it was. But I said, oh, that's okay, we'll fix it later. So that's how I knew it was, right? So from the beginning, I saw really this evolution of the sports supplement, industry, which was dominated by Joe Weider in the beginning. He really started the whole industry as it catered to
He was the
bodybuilding.
industry.
Yeah. Well, he really was a visionary. I mean, the more I think about it, he really was ahead of his time. And some people might say he was motivated by money and power and this and that. Okay, so was Steve Jobs, but he created the iPhone. Okay, so say whatever you want to say. That changed our life, Look at the sports industry now. That's keeping the bodybuilding industry alive, really, because there's no other influx of money in bodybuilding.
For sure.
It's not from the ticket sales, right? Where is this money coming from? It comes only from supplements. It's not from the equipment companies, because when you buy, a gym owner buys the, leg extensions and the lat machine, does that money go back into the bodybuilding community? No, it doesn't.
Yeah, and they last a decade.
Yeah, they last forever.
A good one, yeah.
And those companies don't invest in the Mr. Olympia. They don't really invest in the Arnold Classic to the point of a supplement company. Supplement companies really keep everything alive and healthy and growing, So we consume the supplements. They sponsor the shows, bodybuilding grows, that's the cycle that brings everything to life and keeps it growing, So I'm a big fan, even though there are, certain characters in the supplement industry that are a little crazy, and we all know who they are. Just kind of stay away from them. And some people look at bodybuilding as, I can make money off these guys, They're usually not people from the bodybuilding industry. They're not even athletes. They're entrepreneurs that think, I can make this protein powder and pre-workout and fat burner. I can sell it to these meatheads and we'll make whatever claim. And even if we get sued 5 years down the line, we've made our millions of dollars. So I see that a lot, and that kind of bothers me. But then you get reputable people that live and love this industry, like Labrada, Lee Haney, Gaspari. They come from this industry, And even like people who start companies, they love the fitness world. They love the gym. They work out themselves.
Chris Gethin, for example.
Yeah, Chris Gethin. Yeah, they all come from this world. They were taking supplements before they even thought of creating their own supplements, right? So they have an understanding of this culture, and they're respectful of the culture, And they're not going to say, you're going to gain 30 pounds of muscle by taking this chocolate shake. They would never do that. Whether it's legal or not, it would never dawn on them. Now, there have been crazy claims, especially Joe Weider and back in the day, we've seen those crazy.
What did he claim, for example?
Just claims that, this is going to turn you into Mr. Olympia or whatever. He's always insinuated that this is the reason why Arnold's winning 7 times, because he takes Weider supplements. That's 70s marketing, okay? So there is that.
As savage as it was.
There were doctors saying, cigarettes are healthy for you, and this is what I recommend.
Even for pregnant women.
Yeah, so it's not just bodybuilding, it's not just the sports supplement industry. So there is a little bit of that. But for the most part, I see the people in the supplement industry as just motivated people that aren't just sitting behind the desk and counting their money and seeing how they can rip off the athlete. Again, there are a few of those. The vast majority are, pretty good guys that want to build, a good company, and they give back to the industry. They do the expos, they sponsor the shows, they do the giveaways and they help out. A lot of them give to charities now. So with all the defects that the sports industry may have, I think it's still a pretty clean business, because if you compare it to what? The music industry, real estate,
Hollywood,
politics, Hollywood, modeling. Show me an industry, religion, sorry, but it's true. Show me an industry that's not super corrupt. We're kind of shining, compared to all these I know these other industries. I work in Hollywood. I know the music business. Real estate, look what happened in real estate. That changed the world, right? So people who criticize the sports supplements as being all evil, bad, and just a bunch of, con men, it just kind of irks me a little bit.
What kind of supplements do you use every day?
Oh, I take a lot. I work for a lot of companies, so they give me boxes of stuff sometimes. So I'm.
Yeah, but what are the essentials for you?
Okay. definitely a multivitamin in a capsule. I don't like tablets too much. I like capsules. I don't like the idea of a tablet sitting on my stomach lining. So I take more powders and capsules. So amino acids for sure in my intra-workout. I create my own concoctions. I love pre-workouts. It's just something about the pre-workout that it really does act like a trigger for me to get in the gym.
It's a ritual, right?
I think so. It's almost irrelevant, how potent it is if that pre-workout gets me off the couch and wanting to go to the gym. Mission accomplished. I'm in the gym. I'm having a good workout. Now I got my aminos. I'm a happy boy. I just want to get my good workout. So again, going back to the fully dosed pre-workouts, I'm not sure if I want, the maximum of everything right before I work out. I don't think that's really necessary. Caffeine's a must because I really like the caffeine. Even though theoretically it does constrict the veins, it doesn't to me. If it does, maybe it's for a short period of time, but it just wakes my brain up. So when you have certain things like beta-alanine, I don't like taking too much. Yeah, like 3 grams or 4 or 5 grams. I don't know how the guys do it. My face would just peel off. Like 2,000 milligrams is way more than I can. I just like to feel that, even though that's not going to really give you an ergogenic effect. The fact that your face is tingling doesn't mean you can have a better workout, right? But it proves to me that it's working with the caffeine and the good taste. It just gets me going. Sometimes when I'm working out in the yard, I like doing gardening now in my old age. I don't know why, but I'm really into it. I just take a pre-workout and I go out and I chop this down, do that, and I rearrange things. And, it's just, again, for me, it's a trigger. I don't need to have, a massive amount of everything, all at once. Post-workout, yes. I like to have, my post-workout meal make sure I get my protein shakes.
Do you use sugars post-workout or never? Just
sugar?
The protein, yeah.
Right now, I don't really want to get any bigger at all. If anything, I'm trying to always get as cut as possible. So I don't eat for at least 2 hours after my workout, because when you work out, whether you're doing cardio or weight training, your GH levels are really high. So I want to keep them as high as possible. As soon as you have a little bit of food or sugar, GH goes down. So I'm not going to just feed it right away because I don't want to get bigger. I just want to get more cut. So I want that natural GH to keep flowing in my veins as long as possible. So for at least 2 hours. Plus I'm doing the intermittent fasting now. So I don't eat till 5 or 6 o'clock. I might work out from 1 to 2. So then at 5 o'clock, that's when I start eating. And I just sit down, and that's the time I enjoy my food. I love cooking. I was born and raised in a kitchen, so I just love the food preparation. I love cooking for my kids and everybody. It really makes me happy. So I really enjoy my food now. So when I eat now, I feel it's towards the end of the day. I can relax more. Whereas up to then, it's just cranking phone calls, meetings, photo shoots, business meetings, here and there. Just a lot of focus on work. Then I work out, get rid of a lot of that stress, and then I eat, and then I sleep and watch my TV at night. So, I'm in a nice rhythm right now that I think is very sustainable. It makes me happy. It's given me results, and not a day goes by that someone says, "Hey, dude, you a bodybuilder or something? What do you do?" This old man yesterday in Trader Joe's, he was following me around, I'm just going to follow you around and buy what you buy because it's working for you. The guy's 95 years old, okay.
95?
He was very, very old. He was extremely old.
You should switch because he got to the 95.
I know. That's what I said. I'm just going to follow you around. I didn't want to say how old you are, but he was your typical little old man, which I thought was so cute. So, you got to embrace the fitness lifestyle at a certain point and just enjoy it as much as you can.
But once you get in the fitness lifestyle, you can get out. That's it. That's the lifestyle.
I tried getting out.
Ages. Really?
Yeah. When I started photography, I did more modeling, just fashion stuff, and I was still too big, and I didn't really work out more than maybe once a week. And after a year of that, I just felt too normal. There's nothing. And I can't say there's nothing special about me because I was, making money as a photographer already, and I was just getting great jobs all over the world. But just physically, I kind of liked being strong. Just kind of liked having more muscle than the regular people. I didn't want to be normal. That's why I started bodybuilding, because I was really skinny. And I just wanted to be a little different from everybody else. I didn't want to just blend in. That's why I didn't really get into soccer or tennis and become a soccer fan, because everybody in Italy was a soccer fan. Yeah. You had to choose a team. Either one team or the other, and you had to hate all the other teams, right? And I just didn't like that. I didn't want to be part of that mass. And bodybuilding was like the most weirdest, most opposite thing of that. And so when I tried to just not do that, I felt, well, I like being unique. And even though some people might not like it, I don't care. It makes me happy. I like being strong. I like being muscular and, being able to run and lift. So that's when I said, I just need to work out for the rest of my life,
Alex, you've mentioned your kids. So you've got 3 boys.
Yes.
Atticus, August, and Ashton.
Wow, you did your research.
Why those names with the A and the Atticus is a very strange name. How did you name your boys like that?
I just like the double A. I don't know. Me and my wife just decided Atticus is a great name because Atticus was actually, you know who Atticus was?
A
little bit. He's basically he was the right-hand man of Caesar Augustus. He was called Atticus because it means the man from Athens. So he would go to Athens, which was the cultural mecca of the time. Yeah. And the Romans dipped into the Greek culture quite a bit. So he'd go to Athens and come back with all this knowledge and tell Caesar. So he'd bring all this knowledge from Greece to the Roman Empire. So it sounded like a great name. And August, Caesar Augustus. Ashton, I don't know, my wife just chose Ashton. I thought, yeah, it's a good name. I like it. So we went with the double A's.
Alex, the last question is always the same in my podcast. So yeah. Let's assume the most powerful man in the world is the president of the United States. Mm. So once he gets to his Oval Office, he can get an answer to all the questions. So let's imagine you get to the office.
Yeah.
And the Secret Service comes at you and say, look, we know absolutely everything.
Everything?
Everything.
Okay.
Now you can ask one question and you'll get an answer to it. What would be your first question?
Oh, I'd have only one question.
Yeah.
Where are the aliens?
Really?
What planet do they come from? I know they're around. If you know everything, you probably know something about the UFOs and the aliens, so tell me, where are these things? I just really want to know. That's the discovery of another civilization beyond our planet would change humanity like nothing else, right? It would change everything. Hopefully for the best. Hopefully it wouldn't be harvested for food, which could be a possibility, right? If you just look at history. But yeah, I think that's the one most fascinating thing that I would ask them.
Do you believe in God?
I was an altar boy. My school was it was a Catholic school, so I did believe just blindly for many years. I'm a little on the fence these days now, just with more knowledge. The internet gives you like every book ever written in mankind, right? Yeah. Everything's there in some form. So the more I studied the Roman Empire, which has been a fascination for years, it just seems like that at some point the Roman Empire chose this little group of Christians and made it their religion for a purpose. And I think it was politically motivated at the time. It was a perfect religion for the empire at the time because they were docile. If someone slaps you, you turn the other cheek. If give to Caesar what is Caesar's, great. So they give us, all the money. They're not going to rebel against us. They're okay with being poor because, their priests tell them that you should be poor because a rich man's not going to get to heaven. So all these things fit into this big monstrous machine that was the Roman Empire. So I think that increased the popularity of Christianity in a way that if the Romans didn't adopt it, I don't know if there'd be any Christians left, because there were many of these little sects all around the world, from India to China to everywhere. Yeah. But something about Christianity appealed to the Romans, and the way they made that that religion, their official religion of the empire, and the empire was the whole world at the time, really. I mean, going from
enormous.
Apart from Asia, and they reached Asia, but I mean, the Mediterranean. That was the whole world at the time. That we know of. So I don't know if I'm answering your question. So I'm not saying I don't believe. If it's revealed to me that God does exist and He created everything, I would say, okay, makes sense.
So why I'm asking is because if you're a religious man, if you believe in God, in Christianity, so there are no aliens. So there are
no what?
There are no aliens. There are no other civilizations. So there's Earth. The God created the Earth, and that's it.
Well, He created the earth and the heavens.
Yeah, but
so if there's something else in the heavens,
people. Yeah,
maybe there's humans on another planet, though.
You think so?
I don't know. You got your friends who know everything. They need to tell us.
We got it.
Right?
Alex, it was a blessing meeting you and chatting with you.
We can do this another 3 hours.
Really, that's for sure.
Next time you're in the States, we'll do it again.
We have a deal. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. It was a pleasure. Thank you.
Guys, I really hope you enjoyed this podcast. If so, please subscribe to my channel because this means a lot to me. You can also watch other podcasts on this YouTube channel, Apollo the Original, and please feel free to follow me on Instagram, it's Apollo the Original, and on Twitter, Apollo the Original as well. Take care, guys. See you soon.